Welcome to the Small Church Podcast, where faith, community, and ministry intersect in the unique context of smaller congregations. I'm your host, Tony Marr, and I'm thrilled to be joined by two men who are convinced they're a little bit more talented than I am.
That is right. I'm Robert Kill, one of those supposedly more talented guys, co-host and fellow small church leader. Together, we're here to explore the challenges, triumphs, and inspiring stories within the tight-knit communities that make up our smaller churches.
And I'm Bruce Montgomery, the one here to bring even more to the table than these two and offer a unique perspective to our conversation.
So whether you believe this talent hierarchy or not, you're in for a treat. If you're a pastor, a church member, or just curious about the world of leadership, you're in the right place.
Each episode, we dive into topics that matter to you, from innovative ministry ideas to navigating the unique dynamics of a smaller congregation.
So grab your cup of coffee, settle in, and let's journey together through the wonderful tapestry of small church life.
This is the Small Church Podcast.
Robert Kill.
What is up?
How you doing, my friend?
I am good. It has been a while. Not that anybody out there cares, but it's been a while for us.
Yeah, it's been quite a while. And I've been gone for the last 2 weeks. And the week before I left, we didn't record because your son was supposed to be in town. And then he ended up
his flight got canceled because of crazy Texas weather.
Texas weather. What can you do with it? It's either hot or hotter, right?
He's in Texas. He's in Sherman, Texas right now. And he texted or called me. I don't remember now. He does what he can in the moments he's got. And he was like, Dad, Texas is hot. Like, it's stupid hot. Like, it is so hot here. And I looked at the weather and I'm like, buddy, you're just getting started.
And then they have like cockroaches and ants the size of squirrels there.
Texas is a special
place.
We
have a lot of listeners to the Small Church Podcast that are in Texas. And so Texas,
I'm a cowman.
We love Texas.
I mean, it's like Landon's just, we're from Northeast Tennessee. Like, we lived in Panama City Beach for a couple of years, but Landon has never lived outside of Northeast Tennessee minus 2 years, and he's 20 years old. And so this is all he knows. And right now, like, you kind of need a jacket if you're outside here for an extended period of time in the shade right now. And he's in Texas just like, sweating to the oldies with Richard Simmons. I mean, it is just not, it is not good.
Yeah, I spent the last 2 weeks on the West Coast, and we spent several days. We started off several days in Las Vegas, and we were hitting the upper 100s, 106, 108. And then we drove 3.5 hours down to Capistrano Beach, California, 4 hours. And our high there was in the upper 60s, lower 70s. So it was amazing what a difference just a couple of hours, 200 miles difference made. And then we went back to Vegas to fly out of Vegas. And when at 5 o'clock in the morning, when we rolled into Las Vegas, it was already 90 degrees. By the time we got on our plane, it was eclipsing 100. And then we land in Asheville, and it's like 62 degrees in Asheville, and felt like we're finally getting spring here in the middle of June. We're getting springtime here in East Tennessee.
Yeah, but it's gorgeous here, and Texas is, go Cowboys. Hopefully we've got a good year ahead of us. But anyway, yeah.
I wouldn't cross your fingers on that.
Oh, I mean, the Eagles should be okay. The Commanders will be terrible, and I think the Giants will be a mess. So we should get second at least, and if we play well enough, like, get a wild card spot. And if we play really well, the Eagles stumble some.
Yeah. Well,
they lost Jason. Jason Kelce is the heartbeat of that team.
We'll see what happens.
I'm hoping it's there. So,
yeah. So we've had a lot of listeners write in just asking for an update on Bruce.
Yeah.
Wanted to give an update to everyone because I know a lot of you are concerned, and people all across the country have been praying for our dear friend Bruce Montgomery. He is back home from Florida. He's in a assisted facility here in the Tri-Cities, getting physical therapy, occupational therapy, but he is back home in Tennessee and getting better every day. Just keep those prayers coming, prayers for Carol and the kids as well, as their world has just been thrown upside down with that. But Bruce, we love you and praying for you daily, and for all of our listeners out there that have been asking about him. Thanks for that. We appreciate that. Keep it up. I know that that Bruce and Carol greatly appreciate all the thoughts and prayers that are coming their way, and we'll try to keep you updated on how he's doing. And hopefully, we hope to have him back on the mic at some point.
Hearing his voice on the intro is always kind of one of those unique moments. You kind of sit there and you go, it's Bruce, and you go, man, I miss Bruce. And so excited to be able to have him sitting with us again, and even if it's just to pop in here and there, excited to have him be a part of what we're doing again.
Absolutely. Yep. Good. So Robert, we're talking about something a little heavy today. Mm-hmm. And I actually had this topic scheduled for us to talk about a couple of weeks ago, because part of my daily routine, one of the things that I do early in the morning every day is I open up the USA Today app, and I get an email that gives the top headlines that you need to know from USA Today. And I am a subscriber to USA Today, not because not for any reason other than the fact that they had a sale that you could get 1 year subscription for 99 cents. And so I said 99 cents for a year subscription. I'm going to do that. So I get all of the premium content. I get a specialized newspaper for me, but I also get a thing that they do that's available to anyone that isn't on a subscription with them, that they'll send you a daily email that gives just their top things that they feel you need to know. These are things that you need to know today that's happening in the world around us. And a couple of weeks ago, I got this email, in the very first headline that they had. Now, this is not personalized to me at all. This is the same thing that goes out to 10 million people across the globe. The very first thing, their headline article was an article on the state of clergy in America. And the headline of the article, the title of the article was, "For American Clergy, the Burdens of Their Calling Increasingly Threaten Mental Well-Being." And I was stunned that at first I was like, okay, am I on Church Leaders? Did I open up the wrong email? Is this my Church Leaders Daily Digest thing that comes through as well? And then I looked again, and no, this was USA Today. This was not in their religion section. This was the top headline article that they had on USA Today a couple of weeks ago. And it was a shocking read with what we do at Higher Ministries, what we talk about often here on the Small Church Podcast, to read about the state of not only the church in America, but the state of ministers, of pastors, of clergy here in America that is really quite frightening and quite scary. And so I tried to throw together an episode for us to do before I left, and we had some things that we decided not to record that week, and so it kind of got shelved. And then I got back on Monday, and I tried desperately to get us a counselor or psychologist in to join us. Couldn't pull that off in 2 days' time, but have some emails out to maybe we'll revisit this again with someone a little bit more qualified than you and I. And so basically today, you and I are going to kind of talk through this article and some of the things that it talks about, because I think that it's very relevant to the vast majority of our listeners, and something that I think really, really needs to be addressed. Clearly, it needs to be addressed if a national secular publication like USA Today took it on as their headline.
I think the thing that's tough about this topic, and like you said, and I'm so thankful you said that, I mean, this is not our field of expertise. We've just pastors who have sat in this space for a long time, and so a lot of this is going to be our personal experiences, things that we've learned, and what people have said, and what we've seen over the years of doing this. But like it's one of those situations where I just don't know that pastors have a lot of people they can go to. I think that inside of space, I mean, because the reality is we all have things that we bump up against that, Paul talks about it, that, I do the things I don't want to do. I don't do the things I'm supposed to do. And, Romans 7. And it's just this insane conversation around all of this stuff. I think we all sit in some space where we have these tensions and these struggles, and we've got stuff in our personal life that we're going, man, I want to look like Jesus, and I'm trying to figure out how to navigate this, but there's not anybody I can trust to share things with. I've got personal things that are going on, family that's going through stuff, and whether it's your kids, your parents, your siblings, your spouse, you've got people who are facing hard times in today's world. I mean, I've said this before on here. There's an entire group of people, and I don't hold this against them. I mean, like, I'm not upset at them, I'm not mad, but a vast majority of the people who where I pastor is their home, like, it's literally, I mean, they come 26 times a year. And then all of a sudden, one of the weeks that they normally would come, something happens, they get sick, they can't be there. And you just have weeks where it's just like, this has to be my fault. Like, this has to be my problem. And then this article addresses stuff, even going back to pastors who were facing some things inside of 2020, which dealt with a lot of the race and social struggle that we have around racism and the things that are happening in our country that we need to address. It had to deal with COVID, which I don't know. I mean, are we past it? Is it over? I don't know anymore, but like, that was a huge shift because no one pastoring had ever experienced that type of situation before. And so we faced nor had anybody in the congregations that we lead. And so this is just such a complicated thing. It's such a complicated area to step into. And I'm excited to kind of just talk through it and see where we land and just some of our thoughts and how maybe we can help some of our friends that are listening navigate these things.
Yeah, and there's some crazy statistics out there that a lot of them are stats that have been around for a while, things that have been done by Focus on the Family, by Barna, by Gallup, by Duke Theological Seminary and their initiative for religious studies. But there are a lot of statistics that are really shocking when it comes to the mental health of clergy. And you'll see stats like 75% of people in vocational ministry claim that they don't have a single personal friend outside of their spouse and immediate family, not one personal friend. You'll see stats that like 60% of clergy are on medication for depression. There were some in this that I thought, really, I had to read again and say, did I read that correctly? That the Hartford Institute did a survey of 1,700 pastors just last year. So this is recent, and showed that the vast majority had high levels of discontent. Over half of the people, the 1,700 clergy that they surveyed, that they polled for this, over half of them said that they thought about leaving their congregations, and more than half said they considered regularly leaving ministry altogether. Over half of the people that are in ministry regularly considered just calling it quits and getting out.
It's, like I said, it's difficult. And I got a call yesterday from somebody that I would consider a friend, and they're like, "Hey, probably going to be leaving the church." And I said, "Okay." I mean, and I was going to ask, and really I didn't even say, okay. He was talking, and he just said, "Hey, probably going to be leaving." And just kind of came down to, he was like, "I've prayed about this." And I thought, okay, we're done now. I mean, because I can't
argue with that.
Yeah, I can't argue with the creator of the universe. And I told him that at the end. I said, "Look, I'm not begging you to stay, but I want you to know that's not from a fact that I don't love you and I don't care about you. But you said you prayed about this. So I've either A, got to assume that you didn't hear from God correctly, or B, I have to go, and that I have to go against the creator of the universe to try to convince you to do something that you feel he's calling you to do." And this, 40-minute phone conversation that I was in my car with my family driving back from something that we had. And by the way, if I sounded snarky, man, I don't mean to. Like, I'm rattling this stuff off really quick. I think my family is sometimes, because they get the version of me that's a little intense sometimes. And I think they're actually always kind of impressed when I face some hard stuff, like how not emotionless, because I'm very emotive in my speaking and how I handle things, but just how calm I can sit in some of these conversations. But I hung up and I literally looked at my wife and I just said, I'm starting to think it's me. And I just don't know, I don't know what this looks like. I don't know if this is the space. I know I'm growing spiritually. I know what's happening here. I know I'm not the same person that took this job 2 years ago. And I'm thankful for that. Crazy thankful for that. But I just don't know that I can do this. And I'm not resigning. Man, I hope nobody from my church listens to this thing. Have no interest in resigning. That sounds terrible. I would love for all of my church to listen to this. Sign up for it today. But I mean, have no interest in resigning. I love who I'm leading, but man, we are called to something that is so heavy and so big. And we're asking people to give up their lives to follow Jesus, to sacrifice, to deny themselves, take up the cross and follow him. And we have just gotten to a space in this world that so many people are so happy living this watered down, complacent version of Jesus that it's making it really complicated. And I think there's two people listening to this, and I don't really think there's an in-between. I think there's people who, that as pastors and leaders, we are overly committed to Jesus and we're trying to get there. We fail, we sin, we have steps back every day. And there's people who are living a little bit of a watered down, but you found a really good rhythm and you're just good with it. People always tell you your sermons are good. Nobody ever leaves the church. Your church seems to be growing. There's good things that are there, but you're missing. You and I had a conversation about this, about a church that just right before. There's just things that are missing, and it tends to be the intensity of following Jesus the way he designed it to be. And so I'm not saying I'm perfect and you come to my church some, so Tony, I'm not, but we're leading down that path. And I do say some hard things. And I'm encouraging people to take some steps that are really risky, but it's just days that you just go, man, this must be me. Somebody else could do this better. I'll go sell insurance.
Yeah, and I think that everybody who's been in ministry has been in that place. And everybody has had those exact feelings, those exact thoughts. I think some of the things that this article brought to light that was very enlightening for me to read and process through my own personal filter of things that I've experienced, things that I've gone through, and then the guys that I work with regularly and talk with regularly, hearing what they're saying, is being a pastor used to be something that you were proud of. It used to be something that elicited some sort of respect within the community, even the non-Christian community, right? I had many of those moments where you're getting your hair cut and what do you do for a living? And, I'm a pastor, and their mood immediately changes. They act a little bit different. Even if they're unbelievers, there's just a certain level of respect that came with the title, we'll say. Yeah. That's vanished. That really has vanished. This said that there are 4%, that Gallup did a poll in 2023. They called their honesty and ethics poll. That in 2020, their Gallup's honesty and ethics poll, just 32% of Americans rated clergy as trustworthy. 32% rated Americans as trustworthy.
And when we watch the news, we start understanding why.
Every day it seems like we're seeing another pastor that's fallen, another pastor that's in the headlines for the wrong reasons, another church that's in the headlines for the wrong reasons. And this distrust in the church and in its leadership is just continuing to grow and to grow and to grow. And for those in full-time vocational ministry, you carry the weight and the baggage of other people's mistakes and other people's headlines. That gets projected onto you, even though it's someone that you probably have no relationship with whatsoever, but just by proxy, you are tied into that, and it reflects your congregation and your culture, your community's opinion and view of you because of the things that they're reading about something that's happening on the other side of the country.
And we've talked about this some in the past, and I've even mentioned this quote from Dallas Willard, but the idea that the church has done a great job of making Christians, but we were never called to make Christians. We were called to make disciples. And in the American church, we've just gotten things upside down, and not in a good way, not in a Sermon on the Mount upside down kingdom way. We've gotten things upside down. I guess in theory, we've turned them right side up to make it make sense to us. And in that space, the church has not, because if you look at the Bible, I mean, you hear pastors say all the time, stranded on a desert island, you open this book and you read it. I mean, you're going to follow Jesus. I mean, it's going to be a thing of like, you're going to commit your life to following him, not just going through the motions. You're going to see the seriousness of what it means and the intensity. And in that, you're going to find that passion. And so, I think that some of that tension, and we have to take, as pastors, we have to take some responsibility for that. And I told my friend on the phone yesterday, I said, I need you to understand what's going on in my life and where I'm growing. And I said, and I can't just come in on a Sunday and drop that. And he's like, well, why not? And I said, because you're not where I'm at. I sit in circles where I talk about this literally 24/7. Ask my wife anytime I'm not like texting and calling. It's like, hey, so what do you think about this in the Bible? What do you think about this principle? Have you read this book yet? And she's just like, and she loves it, by the way. So for her, it's a different conversation. There were moments she didn't love it as much. We've both grown a lot. I just kind of that space, the other campus pastors in my network, they'll send a video or something. And I'm like, this is amazing. How do we implement it? Because we can't drop that on our people. They're not ready. We've been talking about this part of this discipline for 3 months. You found a really cool video because your algorithm aligned to it, because we've been searching it over and over and over and over and over. Our hearts are attuned to that. Now you're getting ready to walk into a congregation of 100, 200, 300 people and drop this hammer and say, all right, shift everything in your life. They're not ready for that. How do we help them take the steps? And that's the beauty of sanctification. But we've got to be taking the steps. And I don't think people in our life understand. I don't think the people who are in our life, especially in our congregations, understand that all the time. And so every time I step on stage, it's a balance of, okay, Holy Spirit, how do you want me to address this piece? And sometimes I'll say things that I had not planned on saying, and we'll see where it lands. And then sometimes I'm going, okay, I don't feel like I need to drop that heavy hammer today. But in that it creates, if anybody listening is like me, those moments where you're going, I know what people need. I know what they need to hear. One of the things my friend said to me yesterday was, he's like, I just need somebody that's going to step on my toes. I said, that's not my job. That's the Holy Spirit's job. And I said, and I'll never be a toe stepper. And so if that's what you're looking for, we're definitely not the church for you, but I'm just kind of there. And so that's that thing of like, I'm not trying to step on people's toes. I'm going, man, the Holy Spirit like is really seeing that in that moment. So
yeah, and I think along with that, one of the things that this article says is, and I'm just going to read this straight from the article, that a lot of people want the clergy to think the way they do, and they want Jesus to think the same way that they do. And sometimes that's just not the case, and that puts clergy in a difficult position. Toxic and biased congregations are the rule these days, especially in more rural congregations.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it so difficult. There have been a number of times over the past, not even that long, the past couple of months, that my wife has said to me, I'm really kind of glad that you're not a lead pastor in a church right now and having to deal with these conversations with people, because even, I mean, it hasn't been that long since I was a senior pastor at a church. And just in the few years since then, the climate in our society has changed so drastically that the pressures that you have to feel every single week with how do you address things, and knowing that if you take a stance one way or another, you're going to offend, upset, and possibly lose 50% of your congregation, because our culture, our society is so split on everything.
Yeah, I mean, I was teaching 1 Timothy 4:1-8 the other week, and just, this whole idea that, there'll come a point in time when people will not put up with sound doctrine, instead to suit their own desires and, their itching ears. I mean, it's just this whole thing. And we're sitting in that space, is that churches way more want somebody to tell them to continue to live the version of Christianity that they have been following for years, they want them to. I mean, nobody wants to get to be mine and your age or older and go, no, maybe I've done this wrong for 40, 50, 60, 70 years. Maybe I missed, and maybe when I say wrong, you know what I mean? Like I've missed something here. I should have been more passionate about this. I should have been more focused on this. And instead of going, okay, this is sanctification, and step in and move and go, they'd rather kind of find people to teach them and say what they want to hear. And I just think that's what you're saying there. You're absolutely spot on. And I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Some days I don't feel like I have any answers of how to kind of can navigate through and work through some of that stuff.
I think that one of the big problems is a lot of people, I'm not even going to say the majority, but a lot of people come to church with the hope and expectation that they are going to leave having been justified and affirmed rather than guided and discipled, led down a process of a path of discipleship. They want to be justified and affirmed in their life and in the choices that they're making. That, yeah, I'm a good person. I'm living life well, instead of having their compass refocused, which we used to always say, come as you are, but don't stay that way.
Yeah.
We want you to leave this place different than you were when you came in.
Come in your shorts, but we got a suit store right out front. You can buy a good suit before you leave. No, yeah. I mean, I think that's the thing too, is so much of this is just outward look. I love that phrase, by the way. I don't hear that enough anymore, but, like we come and we dress up the outside, and then we feel like, okay, I've done my part here today. And I don't think, I'm a church where we wear, I've said this on here before. I mean, from about late September till the sun just makes me do it in sometime in usually late March, early April, I'm in sneakers, jeans, and a hoodie. I mean, every Sunday, that's what I wear. And so I don't, and that's not like some hard brag or something. I don't feel like dressing down though changes me any better than dressing up does. I still have to apply things and live it out. And that's just such a tension is, so now the shift comes into, and you start to think about us and kind of talking about this bigger picture, like how do we take and start to address the mental, emotional, physical, spiritual tensions and struggles that we're going through that cause us to need the help and the things that to deal with our mental well-being inside of all these emotions and things that we're feeling. And I think that's while we need to lead our people, how do we lead ourselves to where at the end of the day, when we walk away, whatever's good, whatever's holy, whatever's noble, think about such things. How are we living in that space to where, as I read through the Sermon on the Mount and I look at the Beatitudes and I look at all these things, worry and, just the stuff that Jesus sets up in this sermon, prayer and things, how do I align myself to those in a way that regardless of what happens around me, that my heart and my mind can handle and move through these situations in a way that honors him and ultimately leads others well, but that follows him closely.
Yeah, I think that's great. And ultimately that should be our number one criteria, right? We're serving one person. Mm-hmm. We're seeking the approval of one person. And if our hearts and our minds and our focus is on our relationship with Jesus and simply just trying to draw people closer to Jesus, then so many of these things should take care of themselves, but they don't.
Yeah.
Because we're human. And because there are pressures, there are demands, there are things that are put on us as pastors that I don't think, you may disagree. I think you can be walking as close to Jesus. You can be following in his footsteps as closely as possible. You could be so in tune with the Holy Spirit, to look at Isaiah, you could be soaring, right, on wings of eagles. You're not in the walking and growing weary. You're not even in the running. You're in that phase of your spiritual journey that you are soaring. You are.
I want to sing it like Remember the Titans right now.
Flying, and yet life is still hard.
My goodness,
you can be in, and ministry is still difficult. And you're still going to have people that send you that email on Sunday night or Monday morning. You're still going to have those conversations, and you're still going to at times go to those thoughts of, man, life would be so much easier if I was doing something else. How do you get through those moments? How do you win when over 50% of the 244,000 clergy in America, over 50% of them have regularly thought, man, maybe I should be doing something different.
I literally said it yesterday to my wife driving down the road. I'm like, the problem might be me. And in that, she knows, okay. I mean, like, he's asking, do I need to go do something else? Am I the right person to continue to lead this? And I don't know all the answers to that. If I did, I would be in a way better spot mentally and emotionally and things.
This report from Columbia Theological Seminary said that
one was good.
Said that of the 244,000 clergy members in the United States, that the vast majority of them work 40 to 60 hours weekly, and 25% of them work 60 hours a week or more. And this is what the report said. This has detrimental implications for clergy in the entire ecologies in which they're situated. They're expected to be the administrator, the teacher, the preacher, the counselor, the staff supervisor, the facilities manager, and the fundraiser all at once. Clergy engage in many stressful activities, including grief counseling, navigating the competing demands of congregations, and delivering a weekly sermon that opens them up to criticism. The strain of these roles is further amplified by having to switch rapidly between the different roles.
And then the people who come and want to sit with you, and again, I'm not saying every person I sit with, but the vast majority of them, I'm not looking to open up to them. Like, they're coming to me with their problems, or like I know something that they don't know I know. And so I'm sitting with them because they asked to sit down, and they're beating around the bush, and I'm going, okay, well, I can't drop that information right now. So how long can I continue to invest time in this to hope that they just say this and just do this? How many hours of coffee can I give up to do these things? And that sounds very self-serving there, but like, it's not somebody I'm sitting with and I'm going in my brain, again, very selfish, but we've got to deal with ourselves as well in this thing. I'm sitting there and I'm going, I've got A, B, C, and D happening in my life right now, and I'm not sure how I'm going to handle those things. You know, it's just, if you've ever had a kid that's sick, I mean, you understand that. And we've had seasons in our life with one of our kids who's pretty sick. And thankfully, thank the Lord, he's the healthiest he's been in 6-7 years right now. But it is just still one of those things that when you sit in those moments and you're going, man, I left my kid this morning and he wasn't feeling great. And I'm sitting here and I just want to look at you and go, get your head out of your rear end and let's move. Can I say rear end? I don't know if I can or not, but,
you can say that.
I can say that.
Yeah,
okay.
you can say that.
I held up shy of everything else. But like in those moments, though, you're so frustrated and you're sitting there and you're like, I just want to look at you and go, look, I know what the problem is. And you've either got to fix A, B, or C, or you've got to go do this. And if you want to honor God, doing this one over here is the only option. You can't just go do what you want to do. Okay, it is what it is. The Lord will love me anyway. Yes, he will love you, but you will not see the same reward and honoring and movement in your life if you choose to go against his will. And there will be payments and repercussions and struggles and tensions, and you will feel them the rest of your life. And I just think that for so many pastors, it's like we're sitting with people and we're trying to help them deal with all their mental stuff, and we have no one that's sitting with us.
We're struggling with our own.
Yeah. And we have no one we can go to, because anybody we go to is either has this bootstrap theology mentality of pull it by your bootstraps and fix it. Come on, man, you know the Bible. Just fix your stuff. Or you can't trust them enough. And every one of us has had somebody that we've sat with that we thought, okay, this is a trustworthy person. And you maybe share a little too much information than that you think, okay, I really need to get this off my chest. And the next thing you know, somebody comes up and you get a text message, or somebody bumps into you at the coffee shop, and you can just go, what's going on here? And then they find a way to go, hey, I was talking with Billy, and he's just telling me that he's praying for you so much. And I'm going, okay, Billy's off the list. And that's the tension and the struggle. And so, it's a lot of this really for me. Go ahead. No.
No, you finish.
I was just going to say a lot of this for me comes down to the fact of that I'm very aware. I would say 95% of the things that are going on in my head and the things that I'm struggling with, God has given me this ability in the last 3 to 5 years to start to really understand what they are. I don't have anybody to talk to about them. When we were leading a gathering that the vast majority of people hated God, questionable on Jesus, and at best believes the Bible's a fairy tale, I couldn't sit and dump my struggles. I mean, they weren't my struggle. That was one of the most beautiful seasons of our life, and I'd love to go back to it a lot of days. But, I don't know. I couldn't share with them because we're not coming from the same starting point, that Jesus is the most important thing, of following him is the most important thing on the planet, that God loved us so much that, what did he give up for us? What did it cost God to see us back in union with him? And it literally cost him life. And I just think that these things, I believe the Bible. And when I read that, I'm going, okay, I need it. I want it to shape my life. It's just this space of there's just not people to talk to. And then, I can always call you, and I know that, and you will listen. And typically what people, don't know is we talk for an hour or two, a lot of times before this. And many times it's you and I dumping random things of this happened, probably me more than you. But I'm smiling a little bit there because I know you can't see this, but Tony's a very good friend and leader in that space. But it's just these things of at some point in time you go, I just can't burden people, but so much. And if you've only got one person in your life, so for me, and I know for you, your wife as well, but for me, it's Mel. And I mean, we just talk. And this morning I was sharing some stuff with her, and I was just like, hey, here's some things where I'm sitting based on what's going on with my mom and what's going on with my family and, other fun things that we're going through, but I've still got to pray through them, weird things that we're praying through, and then just some personal tensions and struggles of hey, and I look at her sometimes and I go, I'm just going through some stuff, and it's a faith development thing for me, and I can't tell you where I'm going to come out the other side of it, but I want to do my best to keep you in the loop, and as God reveals things, I'll let you know. Yeah. And those are scary for her because those typically start to mean, what are we getting ready to do?
Yeah, I do think, Robert, that a lot of times it's a certain type of person that assumes a leadership position, right? And in a church, you see the same personalities over and over, especially in those that are successful. And I hate to use that term, but I think that all of our listeners will understand what I'm saying. Those that are, you see the same couple of personality types. If we were doing the Enneagram, we were doing Strengths Finder, you see the same type of personalities that are going to show up over and over again. And I know that one of the things that I've really struggled with is I've had many, many times over the course of my life in ministry, in church work, and in the work that I do for higher ministries, where I've gotten to a frustrating place where I've said, I spend my entire life pouring into people. It's what I do. I care about people. I pour into people. I go from person to person to person, dealing with their problems, asking them how they're doing, asking them how they're getting through, helping them walk through some of life's most difficult moments, caring for them, caring about them. Who sees me? Who sees me? Everyone uses me. Everyone comes to me wanting something from me, but who ever really sees me? Who's there? You said it. Who's there for me? I'm here for all these people. Who's there for me?
And that's not in a selfish way at all. When you say that, it's not like, oh, this is about me.
No, not at all. It's in a hurtful way to where I understand the 70% that say I have nobody because I've been there. And it was a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago maybe, that I was in one of these self-pity parties and had a really stressful time, really stressful week. Some things were going on, and I complained to my wife. I said that. I said I pour into people and pour into people and pour into people, and who cares about me? Who really? And she said, well, let's think about that right now. And she said, you could call Robert right now and he would sit and talk to you. you could call, and she started naming 3-4 different people. She said, you could call Robert, you could call Steven, you could call Jamin, you could call Bruce, you could call, and she named all these people and said, would this person answer the phone and drop everything they're doing right now to go have coffee with you, go sit on a park bench with you and listen to you? I was like, well, yeah, they would. And she said, well, then stop feeling sorry for yourself. You're not reaching out to them. So part of it is on you. She was saying part of it's on you, that you're sitting here feeling self-pity that no one cares about you, but you have people who do care about you. You're not reaching out to them. But in the place that I was in the state that I was in, I didn't think there was anybody who cared for me.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes, as in our leadership role, we can get so caught up in what we're doing, that we don't take that time to stop and reflect and say, okay, who do I need to reach out to and say, hey, can we kind of turn the pages right now? Can I reach out to you? Can you be there for me? Can we go grab lunch and let's just, I need to unpack some things with you.
I need you to sit silently for the next 45 minutes.
Yeah. And I think that we can get in this spiral of just giving, that we really don't realize we really do have people there that care about us and would be our 4 a.m. friend if we needed them to. And so maybe a practical thing for our listener, if you're sitting there right now thinking, yeah, that's me, make a list. Who are the people that you really could call, that really do care about you? And I think hopefully you might be surprised that there are people there that you might not think are there.
Yeah, and no, that's such a big statement. And I think that's one of the things we talk about a lot is like, how do you build like relationships with people in your area? And it may not always be somebody in your area. It may not be something they're starting out, because, if you're really young in ministry, what Tony said a second ago may not feel very real to you. Like, you may feel like, man, every time I meet somebody, I kind of stick my neck out there, and then the next thing I know, they're hanging me out to dry, or they're doing this, or they're using something to try and, leverage against me, or they've shared information they shouldn't. But there does start to become this radar that you really do understand. Like, there's certain people, as soon as you talk to them, you go, man, that's a really genuine person. Okay, that's an overly genuine person. And what I mean by that is that's somebody that is definitely trying to lure you in, and they want to really talk more about themselves, and they don't really want to have a relationship with you. They want to talk about themselves and navigate this. I think that in those spaces, in those moments, you start to learn, like, oh man, this is a taker, this is a giver, this is a harmful person, this is someone that will burn you to the ground. I remember the first church I ever served at. I was the first full-time church. I was in Georgia, and the youth pastor I was working for part-time, he said, hey, my old church is looking for a youth pastor. Are you interested? Well, Melissa and I had just gotten engaged. Definitely was looking to get into ministry and things, and so full-time. And he said, all right, give me your resume. So I got my resume together and gave it to him that afternoon. And he put a letter together and put the fax, and we faxed it. That's how we sent it. This is a long time ago, people. Yeah, right, way time ago. They didn't even have fax machines when you were growing up. But he faxed it, and on the cover letter, he put your next youth pastor and just sent it through. I'd been there a little bit, and I was 22. I was young. I was learning. There was a huge learning curve, but I knew ministry, and I'd loved people. And though the rest of the stuff was very teachable, just experience brought a lot of things. And there was somebody that was a volunteer, and I just had never really shared a ton with them, even at a young age. I thought, man, there's just something not here. And they came to me one day and just said, as a husband and wife, and the husband came to me and he just said, hey, I probably made a mistake not taking this job when it was open. So if you ever feel like you need to leave, you can feel okay doing that, because I'll just step in and take it over. I'm 23 years old at this point in time, and I just, in a myriad of a million other things, it just messed with me. And I remember going a week or two later and sitting down with the pastor and saying, hey, and he's like, the job was never theirs, was never offered to them. And I'm not being mean or anything. I mean, it wasn't like he just said they're terrible. He's like, they're great people, but that wasn't who we were looking for to lead the student ministry at this point in time. That's you. And we trust you, and we're on your team and stuff. And I think sometimes, though, people say these things, and I mean, and that would be hurtful to me right now at 48.
Yeah.
That would be hurtful. And so you're kind of living in these spaces sometimes that people are really coming after you in these moments and in these times. And so you're going to start to develop that radar, though, to where you understand people that, man, I can trust them. I mean, you and I met standing on a baseball field, and literally I was talking to somebody about storytelling, and my oldest son, who's, traveling right now over in the Midwest-ish, he loves storytelling and acting and music and creative stuff. And you heard that, and not in a way of anything. You just stepped into the conversation and started a really fun conversation. And since then, Landon, even the other day, we were talking about ETSU, and he was talking about the storytelling program at East Tennessee State. And he was just like, yeah. And I was like, don't forget Tony. He's like, oh my goodness, I do have Tony. And like, it's just one of those things that in a very fun way, you stepped into a conversation. 3 or 4 of us stood there and chatted for another 19, what felt like 19 innings, which was 162 hours. We had 4 days go by in this moment.
It was crazy.
So long. And in that, though, there was just this understanding of, okay, this is a guy, he's not domineering this conversation, and he's not running things over. It's just, he's not name dropping or anything like that. He's a genuine guy who's having a good conversation. And you'll start to learn those things. And then you have a coffee with somebody after that conversation, and you do some things. You start to go, this is actually somebody that I can sit with. And those are the things you'll start to learn and start to do. And that's such a big deal mentally and emotionally for us as leaders.
Yeah. One of the things that I really took away from this article that I thought was very enlightening is one of the pastors that was talked about in here that now does a lot of the work that we do. He's 28 years as a pastor for Baptist churches in several different states all over. Is he said that when he realized he was in trouble, that he had no moral meltdown, he had no big sin issue in his life, that he simply started to avoid people. He stopped enjoying conversations that he'd enjoyed before, and he started finding it hard to make decisions. And that's when he knew that he was in trouble, when he started withdrawing, not enjoying being around people anymore. And if you're in ministry and you're in that place, maybe you're not seeing patterns of sin creep into your life. Maybe you're not seeing major roadblocks or flares being thrown up that saying you're in trouble. You're mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually in trouble. Maybe some of the smaller signs are the things that you used to enjoy doing. You start to withdraw from people. You don't enjoy being around people anymore. You don't enjoy the conversations, the going and visiting with people at the coffee shops, going to the hospitals, just those things that used to bring you life and energy. Now you find yourself withdrawing from, pulling away from, and avoiding. I also loved this, that it says, when a pastor is healthy, the church is going to be healthy. But when a pastor is not, erosion happens, and it's very gradual and it's very subtle. That as a pastor, if you're not healthy, your church is not going to be healthy. And so if you're in that place where you find yourself, you're starting to have those questions, you're starting to have those doubts, you're starting to have those feelings and those thoughts, get help, figure it out, because your church can't be healthy if you're not healthy.
Yeah, and so good. And the thing for me is I love sitting with people. Something I've thought about recently, though, is there's a few people that, like a buddy of mine texted me 2 days ago, is like, what are you doing on such and such day? And I was like, Colby might have a baseball game. Why? What do you got? And he's like, I got a golf tournament. You want to play? And I was like, yes. And I was like, and so I told Melissa, like, hey, this is what's going on. And it turns out that I'm going to miss like the first 2 innings of Colby's game that day. And then he's got another game that afternoon. He plays 2 games the 2 days before that. So I'll see plenty of baseball. But I get a chance to go sit with these 2 or 3 guys that are actually a part of my church that I love them. And we sit and we talk and just golf's one of those spaces where you're stuck, especially a big tournament like that.
Yeah.
You're just sitting at places, it'd be captain's choice, select shot, whatever you call it. And we just get to a ball and we stand there and we have these conversations and we hang out and we go. And I love that. But the vast majority of people I spend time with anymore tends to be people that are friends and people that I like, but tends to be counseling and tends to be that. And the thing that I'm just finding is that more and more and more, I don't ever get a space where I just get to sit with people. And that's the thing that I think becomes a little bit harder for me as I'm navigating through this and going through these things, is how do I take and do that? And kind of as you were talking, I'm going, that's the space I'm struggling with. The other thing for me that's catching some tension in my heart right now, and this is just me, and I knew what I was signing on for. I'm the only full-time staff member at my church. And some of our friends and listeners that are here that are listening to this right now, they're going, I'm the only staff member at my church.
Period. Yeah.
You've got 2 other people that get a little bit of cash to show up, and then you get to actually kind of, hold them accountable to some things. Stop your whining. And so in that, I know I'm needing to stop my whining. But some of this isn't whining. It's just that I'm looking at things from perspective of everything is on me, because my other 2 staff members one of them is in law enforcement, and one of his best friends also goes to our church, and they're in law enforcement together. They work together, and he's one of our deacons. And there was a morning that he was supposed to do. He was running sound and doing something else, and he texted and just said, "Hey, I'm not going to be there." And he's like, Kevin will catch you up. And so our worship pastor came in and he was talking, and literally he got a phone call that morning or late Saturday. And they're like, you've got to be in Nashville by 11 o'clock or we're releasing. And they're like, you can't hold them till Monday. And they're like, nope. So they had to go pick up a criminal and drive them back to Northeast Tennessee so that they could stand trial for their stuff here. And so I'm working with people who have very busy jobs. Yeah. So I'm showing up. I told you today I'm driving over, and me and 2 of my boys are going to go and try and fix one of our TVs. That's our screen up front. And if we can't, I'm going to have to get like 3 guys to come help me tomorrow to move like 5 TVs around at our church to get everything to work for Sunday. And that's the stuff that if you had a full-time worship pastor, that the lead pastor would never even know that stuff's going on probably. It'd just be fixed, and you walk in on Sunday and go, man, I love these guys. Things I found out 10 minutes ago that we had a TV go down, and they just made it happen. When you're carrying all the weight and I'm feeling this pain, it just feels like, I don't know. I feel like I'm drowning sometimes. And in that space, I think that's where I probably start to feel some of my bigger struggles in mental health. I still love people, but I feel like there's things that fall through the cracks, like even sending an email or learning how to do, to use ProPresenter correctly. I mean, it's just things that I start to struggle with and do that I'm going, I just don't have time for all of this. And in that, none of it gets done. And so I think that something that would help a lot of the mental side of this is, as you're looking at your week, like what has to get done. If you're a bivocational person, and we always talk about Lowe's and Home Depot and things, but there's a myriad of jobs. You could be selling insurance. You could have a lot of flexibility. You could have zero flexibility. You may be in law enforcement, and some Sundays you're just praying, please, Lord, don't let anybody do anything crazy while I'm going to speak for an hour. I mean, that might be your day.
Yeah.
And we both very much understand what you're sitting in and what you're going through there. But the thing I've had to do in the last couple of weeks, and literally this is really fresh and raw, so like I don't know that I don't know if I have any answers, and some of this may come off as a little scattered because I'm literally living this right now. But if you're sitting there, the thing that I've started doing is, okay, what's the 3 things that have to happen this week? What's the stuff that if I don't do A, B, and C, we could have church on Sunday, and maybe I'm a gifted communicator, maybe I'm not, just depending upon whether you like my style or not. But I could fake it a couple of Sundays if I needed to, and the Holy Spirit might be faithful if things were really upside down. And by the way, I've had that happen. I've had a family member get sick. I've had some crazy stuff happen at work and church and things. And I'd show up and go, I've spent an hour and a half on this sermon, and Lord, I'm not trying to. I've just literally was upside down, and the Holy Spirit has worked and delivered. And it was not me, because I never preached my notes. Things would come to my brain and I would say them.
Okay, so let's be real honest with this for a minute. Okay, we're going to have a little
Heart to
session
heart.
here on the microphone, because you've just sat here and said how overwhelmed things can be, how all these things piling up. But then you sat here and said, now after this, I've got to go with my boys and do these TVs. And if that doesn't work, then I've got to find 3 guys. And before we were on the mic, you were saying, I'm probably going to end up spending 2 days this week dealing with this TV. If Sunday, one of your 2 TVs up front doesn't work, is that the end of the world?
No, in our space, it would be complicated because it's small.
It
It'd be hard to.
I've been in your space.
It'd be hard for people to see some of it.
No, it wouldn't.
But
it's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
It's not. If you were listing these things that have to happen this week,
it wouldn't be a top 3 priority.
It wouldn't be a top 3 priority.
I've made some space, because the people that would typically deal with that, they have. I say real jobs. That was so bad. I was about to say that about myself. They have a job, though, that's very bivocational for them. And so I'm doing things trying to help and serve them, because they do so much for me and for our church every week. So, yeah, no, that's not one.
But is it maybe one of those things that, and it's just, I'm just picking at you right now.
No.
Is it one of those things that if your people showed up to church on Sunday and one TV wasn't working, that maybe someone comes up and says, hey, you want me to come take a look at the TV? And then discussions that we've had many, many times before about activating volunteers in our church and getting people doing the things, by you saying, I have to get this done. I have to put this burden on myself, involve my family in it, and maybe several other people that are going to take up hours and hours of time and put stress on me. Maybe you're not allowing someone else to do something that would give them pride and ownership in their church.
Yeah, the TV's a hard situation, because, like, I'm actually going to go work out with my boys, and then we're going to go look at this TV for literally 20 minutes. And we're going to walk away, and then I'm probably going to call 4 people, and I've got to be over at the church anyway. Thursday's the day I'm in the office, and so I'll be there anyway, and I'll probably be like, hey, can you guys, and they'll knock it out. And so, but I'll be a part of the solving the problem, but I don't know that, like, I will be the one fixing all the stuff. So yes, I understand 100%. They're big. I mean, they're 65-inch TVs. I'll help them get it off so they don't fall off a ladder trying to get a TV down. But I think that for the most part, them switching mounting brackets and moving TVs from point A to point B, they'll be able to do all of that.
But see, what's just happened here in the course of 5 minutes, what's just happened here is beforehand, as we were talking through the stressors of life, like we do before we went on the microphone, and like you said, we talk through our stuff. That was a big stressor for you.
It is.
But now when you really break it down, you say, well, really, it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to get someone else to do it. I get to spend some time with my boys in this, and then
it'll still occupy a few hours of my life. And if push comes to shove, and this is part of being in a network, when you've got other campuses and multiple staff members and things happen with things, they kind of like, man, we don't want to not have a TV. And so I get that pressure sometimes from a bigger picture, but I don't think it would be the end of the world. But I don't personally, but I think that, like, people go, man, we shouldn't have a TV, or we should have a TV if we have that option. And so I still think there's a lot that I'll have to do with it, but I think I can hand some of it off. But yeah, I mean, no, there's always.
We just had a therapy session.
We kind of did, but I mean, I've got 2 or 3 guys that I'll call, and they're retired, and some of them retired young, and so they're still older than me, but they're very capable of getting on ladders and fixing stuff and doing things. They're way smarter than I am, apparently, because they retired not much older than I am. But yeah, no, I just think those things, though, when you sit in them and you go, I think it's stuff that sits on us. What's the 2 or 3 things you need to do? And if I had to, thankfully, I got 70% of my sermon written Monday morning before I spoke to anyone. And so I sat down. I was just listening to a couple of things that I was using like a commentary. I was reading a couple of things to go with what I was teaching. And so, yeah, so I think those are moments that are there. But, later in the week, sometimes usually these types of things pop up. But when somebody's got a lot of work to do, this is my full-time job. And so, I think when somebody's got other jobs and other things, they got to find those 2 or 3 things that have to happen every week. How do you prioritize those? And then, like you said, how do you activate and hand off the other things?
Yeah.
Which is what, I don't worry about making coffee. We had a bunch of people out of town this week. Like every cafe person we had was out of town. And I was like, I can make coffee one week. It'll be okay. And so Melissa and I showed up 15 minutes earlier than we normally do. Our worship pastor walked in 5 minutes after us and was like, oh, man, I was coming to make coffee. And I was like, he just didn't tell me. He just showed up. He and one of our deacons showed up to do it. And before they got the stage ready and soundboard and stuff going. And so, our staff just really stepped in and kind of filled in a week where a lot of our people were vacationing. And I'm praying they're rested and ready to rock and roll this coming Sunday. But, yeah.
All right, so we're about out of time. What are, for our listeners that are out there and saying, you guys have just spent an hour talking about mental health issues within clergy, what are some practical things that you can do, that I can do, that our listeners can do if they're struggling in these areas? I think it'd be great. We're going to try really hard to get someone on with us in the next couple of weeks that can give a more educated and professional response to this than us just hacking at this. But what are some things that you do in your life that you practice regularly that help you when you're having these feelings, thoughts, emotions that you've said on air here that you've been struggling with over the course of the last few weeks?
So 2 or 3 things here. One, every morning, and some more, like this morning was honestly a real struggle. And I was reading and working through some stuff. And again, just being transparent, it was a real struggle. Yesterday was probably one of the sweetest times that I've had in a long time, which probably made today feel more of a struggle. But I have a real rhythm of we're up pretty early at our house. 5 a.m. I don't know what's early for most people, but that's pretty early for us. And so we're up at 5 and, I get a quick shower and then I just go find a space where I'm by myself and I sit, read some verses. Like I'm teaching the Lord's Prayer right now for 5 weeks at my church. And so I'm literally just reading that every morning. I'm working through that. I'm focusing on the things that I've been teaching and like what the words mean and what Jesus was saying, how it was so different for him. And I just sit in this space and I'm praying and I'm reflecting and I'm letting that work. I talk about human skulls and things like that. And I reflect on my mortality and that, like, how do I want to live today to honor Christ in a way that if this is my last day, that I make a difference in the lives of people around me. And so I sit in that space. I read a decent amount, probably not as much as some people, but more than most, I would think. And, my wife just finished, I haven't read this yet, Jenny Allen's new book, Get Out of My Head, Get Out of Your Head, probably not in her head, probably in my head, Get Out of Your Head. And it has radically dealing with emotions and things like that. And Jenny's really living in that space right now. And I think it's been absolutely amazing to kind of sit in that space. Louis, Craig Rochelle, and Jenny all wrote some books around this topic, and the only one I can think of right now is Louis' Don't Give the Enemy a Seat at Your Table. But there's a series of books by those 3 that all came out really close together that were just really, really challenging and good for me. And so I'd say that's the things I do and I really do. I sit with Melissa, I sit with Mel, and we just talk and we work through stuff, and pretty transparent with her. It starts to affect what I watch and what I do. I start pulling back from some things when I'm really engaged with her there that, shows that I would flip on and listen to something random and things. I find myself cutting the TV off altogether or definitely moving away from things that a lot of people probably wouldn't even consider bad. It's just something for us that we feel like we need to move away from. So those would be the 2 or 3 things that just personal time daily, wanting to make that even more intimate, but I'm working through some things there. The reading, listening to people who've maybe traveled that road before, and then sitting with Mel. I probably need to add a 4th level of a better, probably do some counseling and stuff like that, but I just don't do that right now. Yeah. What about you?
I think for me, when I'm in a downward spiral, all the things you just said are hard to do. When I'm in a down head space and in a negative heart space, I don't want to read a book on how to get out of it. I don't want to sit in silence and in solitude. And for me, I need to do something that is going to physically get me active. And so my wife can usually tell when I'm in a down space, and she'll say, go put on your boxing gloves and go into the gym and, hit on Bob for a little bit. I do martial arts, and that's a great outlet for me. Go get in a good exercise, go for a run, something like that will get endorphins flowing in my body. And it's amazing how doing something to physically activate myself helps. And for me, I'm a challenge person. And so to set a challenge for myself, some goal that I can accomplish and feel like I have done something productive. Most of the time when I get into a negative headspace, it's because I don't feel like I'm being purposeful. I don't feel like I'm being productive. I don't feel like I matter, that my life is mattering. And so to set a small goal for myself that is something that I can go and I can tangibly accomplish, that I can see that I have succeeded in this, that I have had a purpose in meeting a goal and accomplishing something that I set out to do, tends to help that mental space in me. Another thing that I've really started doing that I read in a book that I have found, as silly as it might seem, that I have found to be incredibly helpful is just writing down, verbalizing gratitude, things that you were thankful for. I read that there was numerous studies that were done that psychologists have said that it is physically impossible for our body to feel anxiety when we are thinking and speaking of things that we're thankful for. And so I've found that to become a process, a practice that I've started regularly doing. I wish that I could say it was daily. It's probably not daily, but several times a week, where I just stop and say, I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful for this. I'm thankful. These are things in my life right now, in my world right now, that I am genuinely grateful for, and tends to help my mental health, tends to help my mood. I would say for our listeners out there that everything that we've talked about today is what Higher Ministries exists for. And so my first recommendation would be make that list that we talked about earlier. Sit down and say, who are the people that genuinely do care about me, that I do really think that I could call, that I could reach out to, and would pick up the phone and genuinely listen and genuinely care. Make that list. Reach out to those people. And if you don't have any of those people, visit us, higherministries.com, find us on the website, reach out to us. We'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you, either on the phone if you're outside of our area, or take you to play some disc golf, or sit down for a cup of coffee or something like that if you're within our area. We also have a network of counselors. We're not counselors. We do have a network of counselors that we refer to and that we work with, and that have deals with us through Higher Ministries to provide services to people that come through our referral program. And so if you just need someone to be there, to sit and listen and genuinely care about you, reach out. If you need something deeper than that, we can help with that as well. But yeah, I think, again, that it would be great for us to get one of those people on the mic with us to talk more clinically about some of the things that can be done. I know in talking with counselors myself, that they've got great little tips and tricks. Just little things that you can do that are greatly beneficial when you find yourself in a downward spiral and when you find yourself in a dark place. And so, I hope that this conversation has been helpful to you. We will put the link to the USA Today article in the liner notes for this episode. Would encourage everyone to go and read it. If nothing else, it will help you to realize that you're not alone, that the thoughts and the feelings that you're having, that you're not even in the minority, that if you're struggling with some of these thoughts and feelings, that you're in the majority. And I will say this, if you've listened to this episode, if you've struggled through this episode saying, I'm great, I'm in a great headspace, congratulations. Enjoy that, because it's probably not going to last. So enjoy it, ride the wave while you can, and be a resource to someone else. If you're in that place, who can you connect with, other people in ministry that you can be a listening voice to, that you can be a friend to?
Yeah, and I think how did you get there? Because I think Craig Rochelle's book, good gracious, that's probably getting close to
20 years ago.
Yeah, 2 decades now.
Ago, yeah.
I mean, it's just if you've done something and you don't know how you did it, there's a good chance you won't be able to sustain it. And so, how did you get to the place you're in? And like you said, it's in those moments. I mean, and all of us are different. I'm like if it's something that through a good regimen of being physically active, being quiet and still in solitude, and going and having coffee with a certain group of friends every week, that you built that rhythm, like keep that rhythm, like do those things, be thankful to the Father that he has given you that space, but understand and then be willing to be honest with yourself. When it comes to that tension starts to hit and you're going, man, something maybe feels upside down. What have I quit? What have I quit that I used to do that had me in a healthy space? And so, yeah.
This is heavy today.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I think that's about all the time that we've got for today. We're not even going to hit the outro music. We're just going to say, hey, if you're struggling with mental health, if you're struggling with anxiety, depression, or just your call and what all that looks like, we would love to have a conversation with you. We'd love to connect you with someone, or if you find yourself in an emergency right now, find help quickly, dial 911, whatever you need to do. Read the article, realize you're not alone. There are people there who do care about you, who do value you, and who would love to walk alongside of you through this. So for Robert Kell, I'm Tony Marr. We'll check you out next week. This is the Small Church Podcast.